Welcome to Carlton's Math Corner. Today, we're going to continue our study of solving equations with variables on both sides. At this time, please make sure you have a math journal, vocabulary packet, as well as something to write with. So our target today is I can solve equations involving grouping symbols. Well, these equations have variables on both sides, and they have grouping symbols in them. So we're going to be using the distributive property to solve these. First of all, I want you to look at these steps, and I want you to see if you can figure out what is going on in each of these steps. And I want you to see, what is different from the last video that we talked about. Like, what step is added? You're absolutely correct. The first step is the one that's different. What I want you to notice is we started off with 3 on the outside of these parentheses. And when there is a group that's being multiplied by a number, then we need to use the distributive property in order to simplify that. Because we're trying to make it as easy as possible for us so that we can solve for our variable. And so if we use the distributive property, then that means that we got to introduce the 3 to every term on the inside of these parentheses. So we're going to take 3 times 2x, which is 3 times 2 times x. 3 times 2 is 6, and then times x is just x. So 6x plus 3 times 1 is 3. Okay? And on the other side, we need to introduce the 3 to the other terms as well. So 3 times 4x is 12x, and 3 times 2 is 6. On this side, though, there's a subtraction symbol, and so we need to copy that down. Now, if you look at the rest of the steps, once we get the distributive property done, if you look at the rest of the steps, are these steps familiar to you? Well, I hope so. If you watched the last video, then they should be. I want you to notice that step 2 was actually our step 1 in the last video. It was trying to isolate the variable on one side, trying to get it over on one side. And so we always take the one that's smaller. So 6 is smaller than 12, so we subtract 6 because this is a positive 6. So we're doing the inverse. We're doing the opposite of it. So 6 minus 6 is 0. It disappears. Then we need to do the same thing on the other side because we've got to keep our equation balanced. So 12 minus 6 is 6x. Now we are down to a 2-step problem. And in order to solve a 2-step, we need to get rid of the number that's isolated, the one that's all by itself next to the variable. So minus 6 is actually all by itself next to this term with the variable. So in order to get rid of minus 6, we do the opposite, which is add 6. And since we do it on the right side, we got to do it on the left side. So 3 plus 6 is 9 equals 6x, because that's all that's left here. And then our last final step is do the inverse again, and it's going to be multiplication or division. In this case, we start off with multiplication, so we need to divide. So we're going to divide by 6 to get x by itself. 6 divided by 6 is just 1, and remember, we don't have to write that 1. If you do, that's fine. It's not wrong. It's definitely not incorrect. So 9 divided by 6 is 1.5, and if you notice, we get actually the same answer as we did in the previous video. So we have an extra step. In this case, we need to get rid of the parentheses. We got to get rid of the grouping symbols, and we're going to use the distributive property. The rest of the steps are actually the same as the video before. And then remember, always at the end, check your answer. okay? And in the other video, we actually checked 1.5, we plugged it in. We could do the same with, with this video, still get the same answer. 1.5 would make both sides equal. What I would like for you to do is try these 3 problems. The first problem does not have any grouping symbols. It's just for you to practice, what you recall from the last video. And then the last 2, I want you to try simplifying using the distributive property and then solving using your inverse operations, and try to find the value of each of these variables. Thank you so much for joining me at Carlton's Math Corner. I look forward to meeting with you again.